So here are the 6 watches currently in my rotation. Now, that might be a bit of an odd number. It's actually based on the number of slots I have in my watch box, which is 6. But I think that number gives me a good amount of variety without being overwhelming. So let's start out with the everyday watches, and I'm going to start out with this Hamilton Field Khaki. So I actually picked this up at auction on one of those Facebook watch groups. And for me, in this case, I was able to snipe this right as the auction was closing. So the watch itself is an automatic in 38mm and comes in this stainless steel brush finish case. And on my wrist, this actually wears a little bit smaller than a typical 38mm, but I think that largely has to do with the case size as well as the shape. Dial-wise, you've got a classic field watch look with the 24-hour markings on the inside. Everything is really easy to read, and I like how they spaced out everything, but it doesn't feel overcrowded, but they still left enough room to put the lume markers around the edge. Moving to the strap, it comes with this green NATO version, and I really like the material choices here, where you've got this green fabric that's really rugged, but then the more traditional buckle to make it easy to put on and take off. And then they have these leather accents and a leather inlay along the eyelets, which make them more rugged and add some unique detailing. Overall, I love the design, and I think it's one of those pieces that's really stylish, but easy to wear every day. The other piece that I have is this Timex Ironman 8 Lab OG. This is actually a recent pickup, and it's a reissue of the original Ironman that first came out in the 1980s. Fun fact, former President Bill Clinton wore an Ironman to his inauguration. This one actually comes in a few different colorways, but I went with this all gray version. I just love how they've used different shades of gray, so it has some character without feeling loud. The dial itself is pretty clean. You've got the time, the date, and the day of the week at a glance. Below that, you've got dedicated buttons for the stopwatch, and then the mode button allows you to switch between the stopwatch, timer, and an alarm. But honestly, what I love about this piece so much is how easy it is to live with. Because it's digital, there's really nothing to set. Even the date automatically sets based on the month and the year, so you really don't have to think about it. And because it's lightweight and fairly rugged, I'll actually throw this on when I know I'm going to sweat or I need something a little bit more durable. In fact, actually, I've bumped this around more times than I care to admit, and it's held up perfectly fine. Switching things up, we're going to get into some of the divers, and first up on deck is the Longines HydroConquest. This is actually a watch I've been eyeing for a while, and a big part of it has to do with Longines as a brand. I feel like it's a brand that gets really slept on. I mean, most people are looking at brands like Rolex or Omega, but when you see what Longines is offering, you realize that the value is really strong. So the piece that I have here is a 2025 39mm in automatic. And what I really love about this piece is they've taken what's worked really well for the HydroConquest and just clean things up a bit. It's less busy, more refined than the 2024 version, and I think has way more character than the overhaul they did earlier this year. It's an all blue design, a deeper shade for the bezel, and then the dial itself has a sunburst finish that gets this awesome sheen. Now, one of the things I really like is the use of numbers. I mean, most dive watches are trying to go for that more minimalistic look, kind of trying to emulate the Rolex Submariner, but I like that this keeps its own identity with those numbers at 12, 6, and 9. The case itself has a brushed finish with this really nice badge at the back, and then the bracelet itself is a combination of polished and brushed elements that gives it really nice depth and contrast. And because this is a dive watch, it comes with a screw-down crown, so you really don't have to worry about it when it's near water. But beyond that, what I think makes this watch really stand out is all of the small details. Things like the finishing, the numerals, and even the dial itself. That makes it feel a lot more premium than what you'd expect at this price point. Now, with the newer 2026 models just released, a lot of these 2025 models are getting really good discounts, so you might be able to pick one up well under retail. So sticking with the divers, we have something that's a little bit more vintage, and it's this Professional 2000 from TAG Heuer. This is something that I picked up off of eBay, which can be a bit of a gamble when you're shopping for vintage watches, but it actually ended up being in solid condition. So a little bit of history, the Professional 2000s came out in the early 80s, right around the quartz boom. So this is actually a pretty important piece to TAG Heuer. Now, today you'll probably recognize the brand from their partnership with Formula One, and they have their own line of more modern watches, but I wanted something a little bit more unique. The one that I have here is a 37mm, but actually wears a little bit smaller on the wrist, and that's one of the things that I like about it. And I think a lot of that has to do with how thin of a profile it is for a diver. It makes it really easy to wear day to day. The case itself has a brush finish with a matching Jubilee style bracelet, which has this integrated look to it, so it feels like one piece. You've also got a diver style bezel that gives it that classic tool watch look. But the part that really stood out to me is the dial itself. Because of the age, it's developed this patina where it has a sort of speckled look to it, which is not something you really find on modern pieces. And finally, what got me to pull the trigger on this was the value. I mean, most tag Heuer pieces that you're going to find start somewhere in the 2000s, but I was able to pick this up for under $500. And so you're getting something that's a bit more unique, a bit more wearable, and without really spending that much. Now, one piece of advice I'll give if you are buying vintage watches, get it inspected and ideally serviced. That way you know what condition it's in and you're not left with any surprises. Next up, we have something a little bit more dressier, and it's this 1959 Longines Automatic. This is another one that I picked up at auction and really didn't have a lot of attention on it, so I was able to get it for a really good price. Now this comes in at 34mm, which is a little bit on the smaller side. And initially I didn't think that I'd like it so much, but being a dress watch and how it fits on my wrist, I think it works really well. Design-wise, it's got really great contrast. You've got the gold case, gold markers, and the champagne dial, and then a black strap to go along with it. The strap itself isn't the original, but I was able to source this croc skin style strap with matching hardware from Longines, and I think it elevates the entire look. Now, one of the details that I really like about this piece is the seconds hand is just above the 6 o'clock marker, and it's not something that you really see with dress watches these days, but I think is a really unique element, especially given its age. And so this is something that I can throw on something like a suit or even something a little bit more casual like a polo, and it still works. And last but not least, we have my favorite watch in my collection, which is this GMT from Grand Seiko. And I feel like sometimes Grand Seiko gets overlooked. Maybe it's because they have Seiko in the name. But once you see one in person, the attention to detail, the level of finishing, it's all on a completely different level. So the one that I have here is a 2023 in 38mm, and for my wrist, it works really well. Especially for a GMT, it wears a lot more compact and is a lot more refined, almost as if it's leaning more towards a dress watch. But what probably sold me the most was the dial itself. It's got a green finish with these textures and ridges along the dial, and then the rose gold accents that are supposed to represent the cherry blossom season. The case has a mirror-like polish to it, and you can see the level of detail even on the crown as well as the bezel ring. And then the bracelet has a mixture of brushed and polished elements that I think brings the entire piece together. Overall, it's a really great piece from the craftsmanship to the timeless look, and one that I plan to keep for a very long time. And that's pretty much it from the 6 watches in my collection. I have a lot of versatility here and different options, but that's just what makes it so great. But I want to hear from you. Which of these watches was your favorite? Leave me a comment down below, or let me know what type of watches you guys are wearing. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button, as it really helps out the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.